Airlines prepare to replace human pilots with unpredictable neural networks. The legal liability of a plane crash evaporates into the software supply chain, and unencrypted flight protocols leave autonomous aircraft vulnerable to hackers. Welcome to a special edition rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, senior software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the autonomous cockpit. The aviation industry is actively preparing to transition heavy kinetic infrastructure to non-deterministic software layers. This shift is not driven by an absolute safety imperative, but by intense macroeconomic pressures and chronic pilot shortages. Manufacturers are aggressively lobbying for extended minimum crew operations, aiming to reduce and eventually eliminate the human flight crew. But this transition introduces a massive structural crisis. Deep learning models function as unauditable black boxes, breaking the strict deterministic certification paradigms that have governed commercial aviation for decades. Furthermore, integrating these models directly into primary flight controls exposes aircraft to adversarial machine learning attacks, compounded by the insecure design of legacy aviation communication networks. Before we dive into the data, I have a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing the app you are listening on right now dictate what intelligence reaches your feed. To ensure you never miss our most critical forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the DJAMGAMIND channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. Let's unravel the science.
Before we begin today's briefing, a note for the brands listening. If you want to reach the true architects of the AI revolution, the technical leaders actually building the stack, not just the tourists, DJAMGAMIND offers select premium partnership opportunities. Let us position your product directly in front of the ultimate technical buyer. Visit jamgamind.com/partners.
Picture this. It is May 2026. You're looking up at the skies over California, or maybe you're out in the rugged terrain of Alaska.
Right.
And you see a Cessna Grand Caravan cruising along. It takes off, navigates some pretty complex airspace, and touches down. And from the ground, it looks like a perfectly normal routine flight.
Which is exactly what they want you to think.
Exactly. But if you look inside the cockpit, the test pilot has his hands resting entirely on his knees. He hasn't touched the controls once. The CTO of the autonomous flight startup, let's say Merlin Labs in this case, is like joking over the intercom.
Yeah.
And to the public watching these sanitized corporate PR feeds, this is framed as a miraculous leap in aviation safety, the dawn of a seamless automated future where human error is just permanently engineered out of the equation.
The visual of a flawless machine smoothly taking the reins from a flawed, tired human is incredibly potent. That imagery is precisely the narrative the aviation industry is carefully cultivating right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you actually look at the source material for this deep dive, the regulatory filings, the macroeconomic data, the engineering white papers, that shiny corporate narrative just completely falls apart.
Oh, absolutely. It shatters.
Yeah. The truth is, we are watching a frantic, margin-driven rush to integrate fundamentally unpredictable artificial intelligence into heavy kinetic infrastructure. We're talking about multi-ton aircraft flying at high velocities right over our heads.
Yeah, it's not a software glitch on your phone. It's a physical, heavy machine.
Right. So today, we're going to perform a forensic autopsy on this transition. We need to deconstruct the actual financial pressures driving this, the terrifying cyber-physical vulnerabilities being swept under the rug, and how the entire concept of legal liability is simply evaporating.
So to understand the magnitude of this structural shift, you really have to completely ignore the technology for a moment and just look at the balance sheet.
Follow the money.
Always. The public-facing argument for removing pilots is always wrapped in this noble pursuit of absolute safety. But a forensic examination of the industry's financials reveals the actual catalyst. Airlines operate on notoriously razor-thin capital margins, which makes them hypersensitive to labor costs.
I was actually looking at the data on European low-cost carriers and the sources, and the numbers are just staggering. Like, if you operate a single commercial jet, you don't just need 2 pilots.
No, not even close.
You need roughly 10 to 11 type-rated pilots assigned to that one specific airframe. 10 to 11.
And that term, type-rated, is crucial here. You cannot just take a Boeing 737 pilot and toss them into an Airbus A320.
Right, the cockpits are totally different.
Exactly. They are certified for a specific machine. So airlines need that massive ratio of 10 to 11 pilots per plane just to manage strict flight and duty time limitations.
Because pilots are human. They need to sleep.
Right. They need mandatory crew rest. And when you combine that with scheduling, redundancies, sick leave, and training, the overhead is astronomical. On top of that, regional cargo sectors are constantly bleeding their most experienced captains to the major passenger airlines. So the industry is facing a chronic, compounding pilot shortage.
Which brings us to the supposed solution. Heavyweights like Airbus and Dassault are aggressively lobbying regulators for a concept called eMCO.
Extended minimum crew operations.
Right, which sounds like bureaucratic jargon, but it is essentially a Trojan horse for a completely empty cockpit.
That's a good way to put it.
I mean, the immediate step is to reduce flight deck staffing during the long cruise phase from 2 pilots down to 1. And the pitch is that an advanced AI will monitor that remaining solo pilot. But I really struggle with the fundamental logic here.
How so?
Well, the entire foundation of the 2-pilot system isn't just about having an extra pair of hands. It's about cognitive cross-checking.
Yes, absolutely. That cognitive cross-checking is the absolute bedrock of modern aviation safety protocols.
Right. It's one pilot noticing a subtle, weird vibration in the airframe, or catching a minor anomaly on an engine gauge and speaking up before the other pilot lets that minor issue cascade into a catastrophic hull loss.
Meaning the complete destruction of the aircraft. Yeah.
Removing that second human being isn't a technological upgrade. It feels like removing the safety net from a trapeze act just to save money on nylon and, just hoping the acrobat simply never falls.
And you're not the only one who thinks that. Pilot unions, specifically the European Cockpit Association and ALPA, are making that exact same argument. You are stripping away a primary, proven layer of human safety.
I saw there was huge pushback in Europe recently.
Oh, massive. The pushback is so strong that in June 2024, the Dutch parliament passed a motion demanding that any new cockpit technologies must demonstrably enhance flight safety, rather than merely serving to lower operational overhead.
Good for them.
Yeah, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sheer economic momentum might just be unstoppable. Transitioning to an uncrewed cargo fleet promises an 80 to 90% reduction in crew overhead per airframe.
80 to 90%. That is an insane margin improvement for a logistics company.
It changes the entire business model. Furthermore, it completely eliminates fatigue-related duty limits.
Yeah.
I mean, an AI doesn't require an 8-hour rest period in a Marriott.
Right.
This enables continuous, round-the-clock routing of aircraft, maximizing the utilization of the physical asset.
Okay, so the financial incentive is crystal clear, but it slams face first into a massive technical wall. I mean, how on earth do airlines legally certify a system to replace human instinct? Anyone who follows aerospace engineering knows that aviation software certification is legendary for being incredibly rigid and slow.
Oh, glacial. For over a decade, commercial airborne software has been governed by a gold standard framework called RTCA DO-178C.
Okay, DO-178C.
Yeah. And the absolute non-negotiable foundation of DO-178C is determinism. If you are developing highly critical software, what they call Design Assurance Level A or DAA,
where a software failure means a catastrophic loss of life.
Right, exactly. For DLA, you must prove 100% modified condition decision coverage, MCDC.
Wait, I want to make sure I understand that coverage metric. It basically means every single logical pathway, every single if-then statement in the code has to be mathematically traceable and tested.
Yes. From the highest level system requirements down to the low-level source code, all the way into the executable object code running on the processor itself, you have to prove that given input X, the software will always, without fail, produce output Y.
Okay, so the DO-178C standard is kind of like following a meticulously documented baking recipe.
Sure.
Where every single grain of flour is tracked from the mill to the mixing bowl to the oven. You know exactly what the cake will look like at the end.
Yes, highly predictable.
But deep learning neural network is fundamentally different. It's more like a jazz musician improvising on stage.
I like that analogy, yeah.
Right, because a neural network uses millions or, billions of statistical weights that constantly adjust during training based on patterns. You can't just print out the code and point to the line where the AI decided to bank left. It is an unauditable non-deterministic black box.
Exactly. And that non-deterministic nature completely breaks the legacy certification paradigm. Regulators like the FAA and EASA are in a really tough spot here, attempting to build workarounds using a new framework called the Concepts of Design Assurance for Neural Networks.
CODAN,
okay. I was reading through the mechanics of that in the sources. They've developed this incredibly complex W-shaped development process to try and force statistical inference into a deterministic mold.
Yeah, they start with massive dataset curation, trying to ensure the AI's training data covers every conceivable condition inside the operational flight envelope. But the key part is what happens after training.
Right, the freezing of the model. That really stood out to me. That is the crucial compromise. Regulators absolutely prohibit the AI from continuously learning while it is flying the aircraft. The neural network is trained in a controlled lab environment, and once it achieves an acceptable error rate, engineers physically freeze the mathematical weights of the model.
Okay.
Those frozen weights are then classified as parameter data items. This forces the system to act deterministically at runtime.
Wait, take a step back, though. If they freeze the weights, that means the AI cannot adapt to a completely novel situation in the air.
Correct.
If it encounters a bizarre weather anomaly it is literally never seen before in its training data, it can't learn from it in real time. It just blindly applies its frozen statistical assumptions.
That is the inherent limitation. And to prove those frozen assumptions are safe enough to fly, aerospace engineers have to rely on statistical learning theory. Specifically, they utilize the Vapnik-Chervonenkis dimension.
The VC dimension. Okay, you had to break that one down.
Think of it as a mathematical tool used to calculate and bound the generalization error of the model. It's like calculating the absolute worst-case scenario. We can't trace exactly how the AI makes a decision, but the VC dimension allows engineers to mathematically prove that the AI will not make a catastrophic error more than a highly specific, microscopic percentage of the time.
But calculating a statistical probability of failure, no matter how microscopically small, is still a massive departure from the old standard of this code will never do something we didn't explicitly program it to do.
It's a huge philosophical shift, yeah.
I mean, that statistical uncertainty has to be too high for regulators to just let an AI fly a passenger jet completely unchecked.
It is. So the industry is forced into what we call a dual architecture compromise.
Meaning they run two systems.
Exactly. Engineers take the non-deterministic AI and lock it inside an isolated software partition, a sandbox. Then they install a traditional legacy DO-178C safety monitor that acts as a strict governor over the AI.
How does that actually work in practice, though?
Well, the AI is making the flight decisions, but the deterministic monitor is constantly watching its outputs. If the neural network suddenly hallucinates and commands a maneuver that breaks the safe flight envelope, say, requesting a 45-degree pitch angle at a really low altitude...
Which would be disastrous.
Right. The legacy deterministic system recognizes that parameter violation and physically overrides the AI, cutting its connection to the flight control surfaces and taking command.
But wait. Running a high-resolution neural network that's evaluating real-time optical data while simultaneously running a legacy deterministic override system that must require an unbelievable amount of physical compute power on the actual aircraft.
Oh, the processing requirements are staggering. It demands roughly 1 tera operation per second.
Wow.
Yeah, this requires highly specialized hardware like the Daedalian Tensor Accelerator running on Intel Agilex FPGAs. We are talking about installing massive edge compute data centers directly into the avionics bay of the aircraft.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. You can't just slap a server rack and an experimental neural network into a commercial jetliner, fly it over a populated area, and just wait to see if the governor kicks in when the AI messes up.
Definitely not.
So where are they actually stress testing these systems?
Well, commercial startups are quietly bypassing decades of traditional, expensive R&D by drafting off the United States military.
The military, of course.
Yeah, the true operational sandbox for this autonomous technology is the Department of Defense. Specifically, a DARPA initiative called the Air Combat Evolution Program, or AC.
They are using military dogfighting as a software stress test.
Exactly. Air-to-air dogfighting is arguably the most chaotic, high-workload, unpredictable flight environment imaginable. So to test the AI, DARPA heavily modified an F-16D, designating it the X-62A VISTA.
VISTA, right.
This aircraft is equipped with a system for autonomous control of simulation. It basically allows it to physically emulate the flight characteristics of entirely different aircraft while running experimental AI agents during live high-G flight.
And the research highlighted a massive milestone with the VISTA in April 2024.
Yes.
The AI-controlled X-62A successfully dogfought against a human pilot in another F-16. It was pulling off aggressive post-stall maneuvers at incredibly high angles of attack.
Which is incredibly hard for a machine to do.
Right. But the detail that fascinated me wasn't the maneuvers themselves. It was how they were tracking the human safety pilot who was sitting in the cockpit of the AI plane.
Ah, the biometrics.
Yes. The Air Force Test Pilot School uses dual-seat trainers equipped with biometric sensors. They track the human pilot's heart rate, their skin conductivity, their pupil dilation. They are trying to mathematically model trust calibration.
They are mapping the exact physiological moment a highly trained human pilot becomes so overwhelmed by stress or G-forces that they mentally surrender and let the machine take full control.
I mean, they're literally calculating the exact moment a human gives up.
And that biometric mapping of human-to-machine trust is invaluable data. Commercial startups like Merlin Labs and X-Wing are actively leveraging this military flight test data.
So they just lift it.
Pretty much. They study the safety architectures and simulator-to-real-world transition methodologies validated by the X-62A to rapidly accelerate their own civilian autonomous cargo programs. It is a direct technology pipeline from DARPA straight into commercial logistics.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the legal system?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because there is a massive distinction here. If an experimental AI fighter jet hallucinates during a military dogfight and crashes into the desert, the Department of Defense just writes off the hardware. It's a military loss.
Right.
But if an autonomous commercial cargo plane running an AI trained on that exact same military data architecture hallucinates and crashes into a residential neighborhood, who takes the fall?
What's fascinating here is the complete evaporation of traditional legal accountability. Historically, liability in aviation is a very clear chain. It flows from the certified human pilot up to the operating airline and ultimately to the manufacturer if investigators find a physical part that broke.
Very linear.
Exactly. But in an autonomous environment, what happens if a neural network hallucinates because it encountered a bizarre edge case, say a strange reflection off a flooded runway that blinds the optical sensors, causing the AI to categorize the ground as open sky and pitch down?
Oh, man.
That traditional legal chain breaks entirely.
It just turns into a multi-billion-dollar corporate hot potato.
Yes.
I mean, the airline will immediately claim they operated the aircraft perfectly within established parameters and point out that the FAA certified the system.
Yep.
Then the software developer will claim the AI performed exactly according to its training, but they'll point the finger at a third-party data broker for providing unrepresented training data sets that didn't include flooded runways. And then the aircraft manufacturer will just blame environmental sensor noise. Nobody is at fault.
And the forensic nightmare is that investigators might never be able to prove what actually caused the crash. Today, when a plane goes down, the NTSB pulls the black box, the flight data recorder. Right. But traditional FDRs are designed to log physical, mechanical inputs. They record the physical deflection of the control column, the rudder pedal position, the engine thrust parameters. They absolutely cannot record the millions of high-dimensional, shifting internal state activations of a deep neural network during a catastrophic incident.
So they can't see the AI thinking.
No. Post-crash forensic reconstruction of the AI's internal reasoning is virtually impossible.
We're essentially accepting a scenario where planes could crash, and the official investigative conclusion will literally be, well, the computer did something we can't explain.
And that exact liability void is creating absolute panic among regulators and lawmakers. We are already seeing aggressive, somewhat panicked legislative attempts to assign fault to statistical models.
Like what?
Well, the European Union's AI Act is moving to categorize aviation AI as high risk, effectively treating software developers with the same strict liability framework as hardware manufacturers, requiring physical CE markings for code.
CE markings for code. That's wild.
In the U.S., Utah recently passed SB 149, which is a desperate legislative attempt to enforce strict disclosure and liability rules for AI. But lawmakers are trying to force a non-deterministic, probabilistic system into a strict liability legal framework, and the two simply do not fit.
Okay, I want to pivot to something even more alarming.
If that's possible.
Right. If the AI's internal reasoning is a black box, and the legal liability is a ghost town, what happens when someone intentionally exploits that system? I mean, we are basically treating a heavy kinetic aircraft as a flying edge compute data center.
This raises a critical question about cyber-physical threat vectors. The neural network sits directly on the aircraft's primary data buses. Its entire job is to translate raw optical, radar, and telemetry sensor inputs into physical control commands.
Right.
This makes the aircraft uniquely exposed to adversarial machine learning attacks, or AML.
Let me translate this concept for everyone listening, because the research highlighted a brilliant but truly terrifying hack by Tencent's Keen Security Lab a few years ago.
Oh, the Tesla one.
Yes. They managed to trick a Tesla autopilot into deliberately swerving into oncoming traffic. And the terrifying part is that they didn't hack a single line of the car's software code.
No code at all.
All they did was place 3 small, specifically shaped stickers on the physical road surface. Those stickers exploited a mathematical flaw in the neural network's lane detection pattern recognition, forcing it to see a lane where none existed.
It's fascinating.
So, applying that to aviation. A hacker wouldn't need to break into the plane's servers. They could just project a subtle laser pattern onto an airport runway or paint an adversarial design on a taxiway sign, and the AI cargo plane's vision system would mathematically misinterpret the pixels and veer completely off the center line.
Yes. The machine learning model is constantly making probabilistic assumptions based on raw pixel data. If an adversary introduces a specific human imperceptible perturbation to the optical cameras or the LiDAR, the model's logic can fail catastrophically.
That is deeply unsettling.
And the severity of this adversarial threat is magnified by the profoundly insecure state of legacy avionics hardware. The primary commercial aviation communication bus, the actual nervous system of the aircraft, is called ARNC 429.
The RTCA 429.
It is a 32-bit structured word protocol designed decades ago. It has 0 native encryption and 0 cryptographic authentication.
Wait, I need to pause you there. Are you saying there is 0 encryption on the primary data bus of modern commercial airliners?
None. 0. The architecture assumes a closed, secure physical environment. So if a hacker gains physical or even remote electrical access to that unencrypted bus, they can use readily available test tools, like a well-known tool literally called Mudbucket.
Mudbucket.
Yeah, Mudbucket. They can use it to inject spoofed telemetry data directly into the flight computer with 0 latency. The aircraft's control systems simply assume the data is legitimate.
Because it doesn't know any better.
Right. Furthermore, the Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast Protocol, or ADSB, which is the system that constantly broadcasts the plane's real-time GPS position, altitude, and velocity to air traffic control and surrounding aircraft.
Also unencrypted.
Also entirely unencrypted and highly vulnerable to spoofing.
But surely the developers building these autonomous planes know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't they building defenses? If the data is unencrypted, can't they just use AI to detect if the incoming telemetry is fake?
They do. They build deep learning anomaly detectors to filter out spoofed data. But this just initiates a terrifying AI versus AI warfare environment.
Right, an arms race.
Exactly. Hackers use adversarial algorithms to defeat the defensive algorithms. A prime example is a method called TNAI FGSM, the Time Neighborhood Accumulation Iteration Fast Gradient Sign method.
Wow, okay. Break that down for us. How does TNAI FGSM actually trick the anomaly detector?
Think of the anomaly detector as a security guard looking for a massive spike in bad data, like someone suddenly yelling in a quiet room. The TNAI FGSM attack exploits the element of time. It introduces subtle, continuous mathematical noise over a sequence of data frames. It's like flashing a strobe light at a specific microscopic frequency.
I see.
The human eye, or in this case, the anomaly detector, filters it out as background noise. But that invisible gradient of bad data accumulates, completely corrupting the primary AI's understanding of the aircraft's position and speed without ever once triggering the security alarms.
So the fake telemetry just slips right into the flight control system, completely undetected.
Exactly. Or, even more insidiously, adversaries can execute a data poisoning attack. They introduce corrupted data during that W-shaped training process we talked about earlier, before the plane ever leaves the ground.
So they taint the data from day one.
Yes. This hides a Trojan deep inside the neural network's weights. The AI operates perfectly for years, until it sees a highly specific visual trigger or receives a specific unencrypted radio sequence, at which point the Trojan activates and the plane acts erratically.
A sleeper agent buried in the flight control software. I mean, that is genuinely chilling. Is there any viable defense against this kind of edge compute vulnerability?
There is a promising defense mechanism in advanced hybrid architectures. Researchers are focusing on something called the MKL architecture, Mamba-Can Liquid.
Mamba-Can Liquid.
Yes. It is a highly efficient, localized edge compute model running on just 2.5 million parameters. The massive advantage of MKL is that it can adapt to data shifts dynamically without needing to be taken offline and retrained in a lab.
Oh, so it can learn on the fly.
Exactly. In recent simulations, it successfully detected these complex zero-day cyber-physical exploits with 89.4% accuracy. But again, it is a perpetual escalating arms race between the attackers and the defenders.
Okay, let's step back and look at the timeline here. We've dissected the intense economic pressures, the impossible math of CODAN certification, the DARPA sandbox, the complete evaporation of legal liability, and these terrifying cyber-physical threats.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So the ultimate question for the person listening to this right now is, when does this transition from a theory in a lab to the airspace right above their neighborhood?
Well, it is accelerating much faster than the general public realizes. It's primarily driven by a PISA's rulemaking task RMT.0739. By 2029, Avisa plans to submit formal legislative opinions. If those pass, we will see single-pilot eMCO cruise operations integrated across European commercial airspace by 2030.
2030. I mean, in aerospace development cycles, that is essentially tomorrow.
It really is. The regional cargo networks are serving as the immediate proving grounds. In less congested, highly demanding environments like Alaska and northern Canada, operators such as Everett's Air Cargo are already partnering with developers to validate these autonomous systems on older airframes.
Getting real-world miles.
Yes. By 2032, we expect pilot-free regional cargo flights to launch commercially. The entire logistics industry is preparing to restructure its supply chain around fleets that are untethered from human crew rest requirements. Following those cargo validations, initial regulatory evaluations for zero-pilot passenger flights are slated for 2035.
But there is a massive macroeconomic catch for the airlines here. If you look back at the balance sheet where we started, this isn't just pure profit. It's a massive CapEx reality.
Oh, entirely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is just a calculated transfer of risk. Airlines might succeed in saving 80% on direct pilot salaries, but they are simply trading labor expenses for massive capital expenditures.
Right.
They will have to build out and secure redundant military-grade ground control stations. They have to pay for constant, rigorous software supply chain validation to prevent those Trojan attacks. And most importantly, because of that liability void we discussed, they are going to face astronomical insurance premiums.
Because someone has to underwrite the unknown.
Yeah, precisely. The inherent risk of flying heavy kinetic infrastructure doesn't disappear. It just moves from the cockpit to the balance sheet.
And that brings us to a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive. We started by picturing that flawless, hands-free flight over California, the perfect corporate PR triumph. But the next time you book a flight in the early 2030s and you realize the pilot seat up front is empty, remember that the silence up there isn't necessarily a triumph of absolute safety.
No, it's not.
It is a carefully calculated macroeconomic trade-off. The aviation industry has effectively looked at the data and decided that a non-deterministic, deeply vulnerable black box is simply cheaper than a human being. The question you really have to ask yourself as you scan your boarding pass is, are you willing to underwrite that invisible risk with your ticket?
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.